Okay, we're going to start to work on our dancer. And just so that you know, I'm working, since I didn't have a color image, I'm working from my laptop. Okay, so I've got the image in color nearby. You won't be able to see it in the frame of reference simply because of the limited camera view. So, you know, and I guess you could also paint this upside down as well. But I'm going to go ahead and start using this right side up. But one of the first things I want to do is I'm going to take just a little black, just a little. I'm going to use a stick, and I'm going to use some of this just to indicate some of this information, you know, that will always clarify where I am in my work. I'm just going to dip. I didn't want to use the pencil, so I'm just using my stick and I'm scrubbing a little bit of black watercolor into it so I don't lose where I am here. And just so that y'all can see, it doesn't take much to create the suggestion of detail. I'm also going to work some dark in the hair, again, just so that it can stay nice and sharp from the onset, because I did build off from this as a beginning point, so I'm going to go ahead and keep that. Alright, so let's start to work. I'm going to actually, because the figure and the clothing, the tutu, you can see through it, it's important that I develop some color in the negative space, both in the floor and back here, so that I can overlap that purple tutu, and then it'll really create the illusion that I am dealing with a very almost transparent kind of surface. So I'm going to block in some color back there. I'm not going to, you know, again, in some of the images that I showed you in our Zoom meeting yesterday, the backgrounds were not completely developed at all in many cases. They were just understated, because we want the interest to be primarily in our figure. So I'm going to place some color. One of the things I don't like about the image is the ground is a little too dark, and it adds a little too much weight balance wise, because you see the legs creating the bottom of a triangle creates a lot of visual weight at the bottom, and then that compounded by the dark background can be a little overpowering weight wise. So I'm gonna deviate from that and come up with something a little lighter, and I'm going to use a little I'll call it mustard, just a little of the yellow ochre, and I'll gray it down later with something else. It's going to be kind of loud right now, but my horizon line, or that floor, is actually located out right here. And I'm not going to develop too much detail back here. I don't want a real even, stiff looking background, so it's going to have some slight variations in it. Plus this will also help me with seeing the boundaries of my figure. And I'm just going to let it fade out here. Okay. And I want to catch a little over on the left side. Make sure my line is consistent. There's also some transparency there as well. Okay, I'm liking the way that looks. Okay, let that dry. And I'll move on to doing some color in the leggings or legs and her torso. So let's grab a smaller brush here. And I'm going to take a little sienna and maybe use a little of that yellow ochre that we saw a second ago in the ground and mix that up with a little of the sienna to lighten it up some. And I'm going to test this out. Yep, okay, I like the way this looks. And we're going to go ahead and start to place in some color. I'm going to look at both my black and white and my color image, and notice where skin color is a little darker. Here. And I want to make sure I keep another brush handy for blending. As always, slightly dampened. Alright, that's a little heavy-handed, so definitely need to implement a little of this here. Bring this up right in there. Steal from here and push it up in there. Down below. You see how the hands are? Just very little information down there. I'm going to use a little of the drying brush here to moisten this. And get some more of the skin area wet. And I'm going to run a little of this color through here. Work a little more carefully and slowly. back part of the hair tends to be darker in value, and that will also suggest some texture and keep it from looking like a hat, which is a common problem when dealing with the hair. Regardless of painting or drawing media, there's a tendency that becomes an issue sometimes, and it loses its natural hair-like appearance. I'm going to sop that and push it around a little, and come back and drop a little more dark in there so it gives a less definite ending. And again, what we don't want is a solid shape for the hair. Okay, there we go. Now let me get some color behind her. I think I'm going to keep a variation of that blue. Actually, I think I may go with something also slightly different. I'm going to use a little green back there instead. Pick up a little once again, I want to make sure that that hair shape that's drying. Start to move the brush around back here. I just have to be real careful when I get near the hair because it's a little wet. Come inside so that I can get a little overlapping just like in acrylic or oil painting. You remember your brush bends, it's flexible, so if you need to fit something into a tight space, don't forget to take advantage of the flexibility issue there, so that you will be able to end up with a more appropriate mark or coverage with your brush. I need a little skin back in there. Actually, some hair needs to come down a little lower to get rid of that little gap. Let me brush a little of this over to the front. Again, the flexibility of the brush helps me get nice and close to my subject. There we go. I'm going to try to get a little tighter against the hair. Hopefully I won't bleed into it. There we go. Okay. Let me go ahead and take a little. Now, when you use the hair dryer, one of the things you have to be careful about is there's a lot of watercolor puddles right there. And if I'm not careful and I just take the blow dryer to it, I can actually push that fluid, that aqueous, heavy laden, saturated watercolor, and it can move. And so we don't want that to happen. So I would actually let it soak in a little more and then take the dryer to it just to avoid that situation. I still want to bring a little of this down to intersect with my floor to get a stronger suggestion of space. And I want to bring a little of this up here. You know, the change in the color of the background, I think part of that was also determined by the fact that with the color of the tutu, the blue, gray that's there, I think would minimize the strength of that violet. And so for that reason, I decided to change it. Okay, I'm going to leave it like so. Now what I might do is hit it again later on, because you can see the color looks a little flimsy. So I still can come back later, even after painting in the tutu, and I can drop a little more of that blue-green back there. But I think for right now things are looking good. I want to do some of the work in the tights, and then also maybe initiate some beginning work in the tutu. So I'm going to use what can I use? I'm going to use a little of my alizarin crimson red, and I'm going to brush in some white to make it really soft, and maybe even throw in a tiny bit of yellow to distinguish it from the skin color and from the yellow ochre in the background. Let me saturate a little more paint in here. Alright, so let's get some color into those features. Again, I see the tutu over this area, but I do want to create a sense of overlap. So I'm going to brush the color into her leg, and I'm going to lighten this up here with some more water. So this side is a little lighter in value, as is evident in the actual image itself. Let me put a little more yellow. There. Same thing on the other side. Remember when I first talked about watercolor and talking about it actually being a medium that's connected to drawing, actually more so than painting. And so to begin the image with the sketch is normal, and to also allow that sketch to show through is a common practice. It's not considered a boo-boo to allow the pencil to show through. Just to get a little more variation in lightness and darkness. I'm going to exaggerate this somewhat as well. Okay. I'm going to darken just to separate the skin of the arm to the leg. I'm going to brush in a little more of that crimson. Okay. This is just water, just to soften and blend edges out a little. Okay. I'm going to tuck in a little more yellow ochre back in here. I gotta create a little problem for myself here. I need to reconsider elevating the horizon over on this side to line up with the other. Okay, I think I'm on track there. Let me blend this out some. Okay. There we go. Okay. Okay. Time for a little heat. All right, time for the tutu to start getting initiated. Let me take some alizarin crimson and ultramarine. Oops, that got a little dirty there. Let me find a clean spot. And we're going to start from the center on out. It's probably a little too dark, but I'm okay with it. Let me throw in a little light. I'm going to take a wet brush and use it to pick up some of this. Got a little bit of a problem here. Let's see if I can take care of it by sopping that up. Now, with the residue here, I'm going to go ahead and start making some of this look lighter. See, and then it becomes a more transparent.